My husband hid his affair for months. Now, I've uncovered his darkest secrets, and everyone in his life is about to see who he really is. How long can a person be patient before a drop of water fills the birds of a glass? The question lingered in my mind, even as I tried to shove it aside, pretending to focus on the perfectly set dinner table in front of me. A glass of wine sat untouched, condensation dripping down the side. The silence between us was suffocating, and yet I had no idea what would happen next. I glanced across at him, Nathan, my husband, my partner for the past 5 years. He sat still, his face unreadable, betraying nothing. I should have known better. I should have known that this was coming. But you don't want to believe it, not when you've invested everything into a life with someone. But tonight, I could feel it, the walls closing in. Something was about to break, and I wasn't sure if it would be me, or him. The last few months had been off. It started small. A missed call here, a late night there. Things I could have ignored, things I had ignored. But then they started stacking up. Too many whispers, too many subtle signs that something wasn't right. The way Nathan looked at me during dinner, as if I were a stranger. The half-answers to my questions, the stories that never quite added up. I'd asked him about it once, casually, over breakfast. "You seem distant," I said, trying not to sound accusatory. "Everything okay?" He smiled and kissed my forehead. "Just work, babe. You know how it is." I knew better than to question him then. It was the look in his eyes, calm, reassuring, like he was hiding something under the surface. But that's the thing about people you love. You believe the lies, not because they're convincing, but because you want them to be true. And that's where I was, clinging to a love that had turned into a carefully constructed illusion. The evening started like any other. We sat down to dinner in the dining room I had spent days preparing, the same room where we'd celebrated anniversaries and birthdays, where I had tried so hard to hold on to what was left of the magic we once had. The candlelight flickered between us as Nathan smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. "You're quiet tonight," I remarked, setting my fork down. "Just tired," he replied, the same answer he always gave. But there was something in his tone, something different this time. I should have known then. But I wasn't ready to face it. It wasn't until after dinner, when I was cleaning up, that I found it, tucked between the napkins in his coat pocket. The phone. His phone. It had vibrated earlier, and I had heard his name, but I didn't think much of it. Not until I picked it up and saw the notification. A message, from a woman I didn't recognize. "Are we still on for tonight?" My heart skipped a beat, but I wasn't ready to confront him yet. I could feel my blood starting to boil, my thoughts racing. I opened the message needing to know. "I miss you. We need to talk soon. Kay." I knew who Kay was. Her name had come up in casual conversation a few times, but I'd never thought much of it. But now, as I stared at the screen, everything about my life, our life, came crashing down around me. My breath hitched. This wasn't just a text. This was a lie, an affair, a betrayal I never saw coming. Before I even had the chance to process it, I heard Nathan's footsteps behind me. I quickly stuffed the phone back into his jacket pocket, but he had already seen my face. He knew. "Who's Kay?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm. His expression faltered for just a moment, long enough to know I was onto him. But then the mask returned. He started, but I didn't let him finish. "No. No more lies. Who the hell is she?" I could feel my voice cracking, but I didn't care anymore. He shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting around the room as if he could escape my gaze. He opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came out. There were no words left, no explanations that would fix this. I didn't wait for him to answer. I didn't need to. I walked out of the room, the familiar echo of my footsteps in the silence that followed. Nathan didn't chase me. He never did when it mattered most. I felt empty, numb. But deep down, I felt something else too, something I hadn't felt in a long time. Freedom. It was over. Everything I thought I knew about our life, about our love, was a lie, and I wasn't going to let him get away with it. I couldn't breathe. The moment I walked away from Nathan, something inside me snapped. It wasn't relief. It wasn't catharsis. It was rage, pure and unfiltered. I didn't even wait for him to explain, not that I'd ever trust anything he said again. My mind was spinning with 100 questions, none of which had answers. How long? How many times? Did he ever even love me, or was I just a convenient placeholder until she came along? The door to the kitchen slammed shut behind me. I didn't know where to go, what to do, or how to fix the mess he had made of my life. But then it hit me all at once. Body. I grabbed my phone off the counter. His text, her name, Kay, replayed over and over in my head like a broken record. We need to talk soon. It wasn't just an affair. It was a betrayal that went deeper than I had imagined. And that name? Kay. Why had he been so careful with it? Why hadn't he just used her full name? I knew I had to confront him. Not to get an apology. Not to get closure. I wasn't looking for that anymore. I needed justice. For the first time in my life, I was done being the nice girl. I was done letting him think he could get away with everything. I took a deep breath and texted her. We need to talk. It felt strange typing those words, but I needed to know who she was. What she had over me. What I had missed. And most of all, why she thought it was okay to do this to me. To us. The phone buzzed almost immediately. I didn't think you'd message me. Thought you'd be mad at Nathan. I stared at the screen. My pulse racing. Of course she knew. Of course she thought she could hide behind him. I'm not mad at Nathan. I'm mad at you. What the hell do you think you're doing? I said back the words sharp, but deliberate. Her reply came fast. It's not like that. We'd been seeing each other for months, but it wasn't supposed to be anything serious. Months. Months. My stomach churned. They had been seeing each other for months, behind my back? The betrayal wasn't just physical. It was emotional. It was a lie that had been woven through everything I thought I knew about Nathan. I could feel my face heating up, my hands shaking. But I didn't stop typing. Months. So you knew he was married? And you still went ahead with it? The phone buzzed again. It's complicated. I didn't know it was going to turn out like this. I never meant for it to hurt anyone. You have to believe me. I didn't believe her. I didn't want to. But I had to keep going. I had to understand the depth of what they had done. Do you love him? I couldn't believe I was asking her that, but I needed to know. I think I do. But I didn't know how serious it was between you two. I thought you were just a fling for him, not his wife. A flicker of realization hit me, but I wasn't sure if it was just anger clouding my judgment. Nathan had never mentioned her in those terms. He had always said work, stressed, and busy. Now it made sense. He had been pulling away from me to make room for someone else. He had been building a life with her, one that I wasn't a part of. I felt the walls closing in. This wasn't just an affair. It was his second life, one that I had never been a part of. I stared at the screen, my thoughts spinning in 1,000 directions. What did I want from this? Was I looking for an apology? Did I want her to feel guilty? No. I wanted revenge. Nathan had been quiet. Too quiet. I could hear him pacing in the living room, avoiding me, probably trying to figure out how to spin this. I couldn't let him do it. I couldn't let him lie his way out of this. I stood up abruptly, walking toward the living room. I had to face him. He was my husband, for better or worse. And I wasn't going to let him make this about his own guilt. He turned when he saw me standing there, his face pale. You're still here, he said, his voice shaky. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I walked past him and toward the door. I didn't need to explain myself anymore. What the hell are you doing? He shouted after me. I turned around, facing him for the first time since I had discovered the truth. I'm done, I said, my voice steady, but my heart racing. He stepped toward me, desperation in his eyes. Please, we can fix this. We can. No, you can't fix this. I didn't wait for him to say anything else. I walked out of the house, my mind racing with possibilities. He would try to talk to me. He would beg. He might even try to manipulate me into forgiving him, like he had done so many times before. But this time, there would be no forgiveness. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I had to do something. I had to take control back. I drove for hours, letting the night wind wash over me, until I ended up in front of Kay's apartment building. I didn't know what I was going to do once I got there, but I was ready. As I approached her building, a strange sense of calm washed over me. I wasn't here for answers anymore. I was here for justice. I knocked on her door. When she opened it, she was surprised to see me standing there, but not as shocked as I thought she would be. What are you doing here? She asked, her eyes darting nervously. I want to know why. Why him? I asked, the words heavy in my chest. She didn't say anything at first. She just looked at me like I was the enemy, and maybe I was, but then she spoke, and what she said next shook me to my core. I didn't know. I didn't know you were pregnant. Her words cut through me like a knife. Pregnant? I wasn't just the wife who had been cheated on. I was the wife who had been betrayed at the most vulnerable time of my life. How could he? How could Nathan do this to me? To our future? I turned and walked away from her door, my heart heavy with the knowledge that this betrayal was even worse than I thought. I had no idea what to do next, but one thing was certain. I wasn't going to let this slide. Not when the stakes were so high. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, all I could see was Nathan's face, his apology on loop, his empty promises. And that moment, when I learned about the pregnancy, it felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. Pregnant. How could I have missed that? How did I not see that he was building a future with her, while tearing apart everything we'd built together? My mind raced with 1,000 thoughts, but all I could focus on was one thing. I wasn't going to let him get away with this. Not this time. The next morning, I made a decision. I wasn't just going to confront Nathan. I was going to bring everything into the light. I would expose his lies, his betrayal, but not just to me. To everyone who had ever trusted him. I woke up to an unexpected message from Kay. I had figured she might try to apologize, but what she said next caught me completely off guard. I'm sorry. I never meant for it to happen like this. I told Nathan we needed to tell you, but he said it would ruin everything. Please, don't do anything drastic. Please don't make this harder than it already is. I stared at the message, unsure of what to feel. Did she actually care? Or was this just more manipulation? Either way, I wasn't about to let her play me, I replied quickly. It's too late for apologies. It's too late for everything. I'm done with both of you. But there was more to this than just confronting Nathan. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my life, my dignity. I had spent years sacrificing for a relationship that was a lie. I had supported him, loved him, and trusted him. And now I was going to take back what was mine. I needed leverage. I needed a plan. So I started digging. I spent the next few days reviewing everything. The texts, the emails, the old photos. The things I had once overlooked now felt like a dagger to the heart. Nathan had been careful, but not careful enough. I found messages, timestamps, receipts, pieces of evidence that would expose him. But the real breakthrough came when I stumbled across a video. A video of Nathan and Kay, laughing together, holding hands, sharing intimate moments. The footage wasn't long, but it was enough. It showed me everything I needed to know. Nathan had thought he could keep me in the dark, keep me as his wife, while secretly building a life with Kay. But now, I have the proof. I wasn't just going to be the betrayed wife. I was going to be the woman who turned the tables. The day I decided to confront Nathan, I was calm. I felt no rage, no anger, just a cold certainty. I knew what I had to do. I waited until he was home from work. He didn't expect me to be there, and he certainly didn't expect what was coming. When he stepped through the door, he froze. I was sitting in the living room, the video playing on my laptop. He saw the screen and his face drained of color. What is that? He stammered, his voice suddenly shaky. I think you know what it is, I replied, my tone steady. His eyes darted around, desperate for an explanation. I can explain. It's not what it looks like. I could see the panic in his eyes. The way he reached for his phone, as if he was going to text Kay or make some desperate phone call to fix everything. But I was ready for that. I stood up and walked toward him slowly, the video still playing in the background. Don't bother, I said. I already know everything. He tried to speak, but I cut him off. I know about Kay. I know how long it's been going on. I know about the baby, and I know you've been lying to me for months, so don't you dare try to make this about me. This is all on you. His face twisted in anger, but I wasn't scared. Not anymore. You don't understand, he hissed. This is between us. You don't know what she means to me. What does she mean to you? I repeated, my voice steady but sharp. What about what I mean to you? What about the years we spent together? The future you promised me? I took a step closer. You've made your choice. Now, you're going to live with it. But I'm not the only one who needs to know the truth. It's time for everyone to see you for what you really are. Nathan's face twisted in disbelief. You wouldn't. You wouldn't ruin everything like this. You can't. This is our marriage. Our life. Not anymore, I said coldly. Our marriage was over the moment you decided to lie and betray me. And now you'll see just how far I'm willing to go to make sure everyone knows the truth. With that, I grabbed my phone. I wasn't just going to tell people, I was going to show them. I posted the video. I shared it on every platform I could think of, from social media to private group chats where our mutual friends could see. I didn't just share it with his family, no. I sent it to everyone who had ever been a part of our life. Anyone who had ever thought Nathan was the perfect husband. And then, I waited. I waited for the flood of messages. The phone calls. The backlash. But none of it mattered. Because I knew the truth would come out, and Nathan's reputation would crumble. The aftermath wasn't easy. I spent the next few days dealing with the fallout. Friends who didn't know what to say. Family members who tried to defend him. But I didn't care. What mattered now was my freedom. The man I had loved, the man I had trusted, was gone. And now it was my turn to rebuild. The real twist came the day Nathan tried to beg me back. He called, sent texts, even showed up at my door. He was desperate, broken, and pleading. But the final nail in the coffin was when Kay reached out to me again. This time, she wasn't apologizing. This time, she was telling me something that would change everything. I never wanted this to go public, she said over the phone, her voice trembling. But Nathan isn't just lying to you. He's lying to everyone. He never planned to leave you for me. He was using us both. And you need to know, there's someone else. Someone he's been seeing behind both our backs. I felt a chill run down my spine. Was there even more to this? Could Nathan really have been playing all of us? Or was Kay just another piece of his game? One thing was certain. This was far from over. I would get to the bottom of it, no matter what it took. I had no idea how deep this went. The further I dug, the more I uncovered. At first, I thought I was just exposing Nathan for what he'd done to me. But what I found next shocked me to my core. The betrayal wasn't just about him and me. It was bigger than that. It was a web of lies that spanned years. And now, I was pulling at the threads, ready to unravel everything. The first thing I did after Kay's call was take a breath. As much as I wanted to react immediately, I knew I had to be smart. If Nathan was lying to everyone, if he was playing a game bigger than just the two of us, then this wasn't something I could just handle on my own. I needed to step back, think, and play my next move carefully. That night, I stayed up until the early hours of the morning, researching every possible angle. Nathan was no ordinary man. He had connections. People in high places. He had built a life that wasn't just built on lies, but on manipulation, control, and a perfect image of success that everyone admired. What if Kay was right? What if Nathan's betrayal wasn't just a personal failure, but part of a much darker, more twisted game? The next day, I reached out to someone I never thought I'd need to contact. Megan, Nathan's ex-girlfriend. They'd been together for a few years before we met, and their breakup had always been messy. I knew Megan didn't like me, but she might know things I didn't. I had her number from when I'd once tried to reach out to her for closure about the past. I figured now was as good a time as any. So, I sent her a text. Megan, I know this is probably weird, but I need to talk. It's about Nathan. I think he's been hiding a lot from me, and I need answers. She responded almost immediately. Are you serious? After everything he did to me, you think I'd help you? Go ahead, play his game. You'll end up just like me. Trust me. Her words were harsh, but the anger in her message made me realize something. She didn't just hate Nathan. She feared him, and I needed to know why. After some back and forth, Megan agreed to meet me. We met at a small cafe in town, a neutral ground. She was clearly on edge when I arrived, her eyes darting around as if she expected Nathan to show up at any moment. I wasted no time. I need to know what happened between you two. What am I missing? You said just like me. What do you mean by that? Megan paused, her fingers tapping nervously on the coffee cup. After what felt like an eternity, she finally spoke. He's not who you think he is, she said quietly. I know it's hard to believe, but he's been doing this his whole life. He doesn't love people. He never has. He uses them, and when he's done with them, he moves on to the next. I leaned in, feeling a sickening knot in my stomach. What do you mean moves on? You mean, like what he did to me, to Kay? Megan nodded. Yes, exactly. He doesn't care about anyone but himself. When he was with me, he had me thinking we had this perfect future. But then he found someone else, someone who could give him more power, more control. That's all this is about, you know. Power. Control. He plays a game, and you're just a pawn. Her words hit me harder than I expected. I thought I was the one who had been betrayed, but this was much bigger. Nathan wasn't just lying to me. He was manipulating everyone, and I had been one of the many people caught in his web. As I walked away from the meeting with Megan, I felt a shift inside me. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It wasn't even just about Nathan. This was about exposing him for what he truly was, and making sure he never got away with hurting anyone else. I made a decision right then. I was going to confront him, but not just in front of a few people. I wasn't going to settle for just hurting his reputation. I was going to destroy the empire he'd built on lies. I needed to hit him where it would hurt the most. That afternoon, I called in a favor from someone I'd kept in touch with, a private investigator named Alex. He'd worked for me in the past, when I'd needed a background check on a potential business partner. But now, I need him for something much more personal. I need everything you can find on Nathan, I said to him over the phone. I'm not talking about his financials or basic history. I need you to dig deep. I need to know everything. Every connection, every deal, every skeleton in his closet. Alex didn't ask any questions. He just agreed, and within a few hours I had a packet of information that would shatter Nathan's carefully constructed facade. I spent the next few days going through everything. Names, dates, bank transfers, business dealings. It was like reading a novel, but instead of a hero, Nathan was the villain. The deeper I dug, the more I realized that everything he had built had been funded by manipulation, lies, and deceit. He had used his charm to gain trust, but behind the scenes, he'd been running a network of fraudulent businesses and shady deals, using people like pawns in his game. And I had everything. Proof. Evidence. Nathan was finished. I didn't waste time. I set up a meeting with Nathan at his office, knowing he'd be there for the next few hours. I wasn't nervous. This time, I had all the power. I had the truth on my side. When I walked into his office, he didn't seem surprised to see me. I think he expected this confrontation. But what he didn't expect was what I had in my hands. I slapped the packet of documents down on his desk. This is it, I said, my voice calm but cutting. This is everything. The truth about what you've been doing behind closed doors. Nathan's face went pale as he looked through the papers. His hands shook as he read over the damning evidence. You think you can just expose me? He spat. You think you've won? I built this empire? You don't even understand. I understand perfectly, I interrupted. And now, everyone else will too. The satisfaction I felt in that moment was indescribable. Nathan had spent his whole life building a house of cards, and with one move, I had made it all come crashing down. Just as I thought it was over, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Kay. I thought you should know, Nathan isn't the only one with secrets. I have something you need to see. I opened the attachment she sent. It was a video. Nathan, in a meeting with some high-profile clients. His hands were shaking and his voice was quivering. The words on the video? We're in this together. I need you to keep this quiet. If this leaks, everything will fall apart. We'll both lose everything. The video wasn't just about Nathan's shady dealings. It was about the people he'd been using, manipulating, and threatening for years. And now, I have the ultimate weapon. Nathan was no longer the man I had loved. He was a monster, and I was going to make sure everyone knew it. The pieces were falling into place, and I was finally taking control. I thought I had won. I had everything. The proof. The lies. And the truth that would destroy Nathan. But the moment I walked away from that office, something felt off. I could taste the bitterness in the air. But it wasn't just the satisfaction of revenge. No, there was more to this. Something I hadn't anticipated. I had the video. I had the documents. I had the high ground. But as the days passed, the weight of everything started sinking in. Nathan didn't just have secrets. He had backup plans. He had allies, too. I got a call from Kay late one night. Her voice sounded strained, something I'd never heard before. I don't know what's going on, but Nathan's people are starting to make moves. He's not going down without a fight. I think he's already preparing his counterattack. My stomach dropped. I had prepared myself for everything, except this. I wasn't prepared for the kind of fight Nathan was willing to bring. The next morning, I woke up to a flood of emails. Most of them were from lawyers. The message was clear. Nathan was filing a lawsuit against me for defamation. He claimed that the documents I had exposed were fabricated, that I had no right to release private business dealings, and that my actions had caused irreparable damage to his reputation. I stared at the screen, dumbfounded. This wasn't just a legal threat. This was a declaration of war, and it made me realize something I should have known all along. Nathan was a master manipulator, and he had control over more than just his own empire. I had no choice but to go on the offensive. But I couldn't just fight this in a courtroom. Nathan had already won there. I needed to hit him where it hurt the most, his carefully constructed image, the one he had spent years cultivating. I called in a favor, a risky one. I contacted an old friend, one who worked in the media, someone who knew how to expose a person in ways that left no stone unturned. I needed to make sure that when the world saw Nathan's face, they wouldn't just see a successful businessman. They would see a man who had built his empire on lies. It didn't take long for my friend to gather intel. The scandal that was about to erupt wasn't just about Nathan's dealings. It was about everything, his family, his secrets, his manipulations. And I wasn't going to stop until the truth was out there for everyone to see. But the more I uncovered, the more I realized just how much I had underestimated Nathan's reach. His influence stretched into places I never imagined. He had ties to people I didn't even know existed. His family, his friends, his business partners, they were all in on it, to varying degrees. It was starting to feel like I was up against an army. One night, as I sat in my apartment, the weight of everything pressing down on me, my phone buzzed again. It was a message from Kay. "You need to get out of town. They're watching you." I froze. Kay had been my ally through this whole thing, and she was always one step ahead. If she was telling me to run, then it meant things were getting dangerously close to going off the rails. I didn't need to be told twice. I grabbed my bag, stuffed a few essentials in it, and left without a word. As I drove away, I could feel the tension in my chest. Nathan wasn't just trying to ruin me. He was trying to break me, and that, more than anything, was what terrified me. For the next few days, I kept moving. I stayed with Kay at her place, constantly switching locations. I didn't want to make it easy for Nathan or his people to track me. But with every passing moment, I knew I was getting closer to the final confrontation. Nathan was digging in. He was preparing for battle in every way possible. He was using his money, his influence, and every trick he knew to keep control. And here I was, stuck in a game where the rules were constantly shifting, but I wasn't about to back down. I'd come too far to let him win. Then, just as I thought it couldn't get worse, I received an anonymous tip. Someone inside Nathan's organization was willing to talk. They had information. Something big. Something that would destroy Nathan once and for all. I met the source in a dimly lit bar, the kind of place where nobody asked questions. My heart raced as I listened to them speak. They told me everything. The illegal contracts, the blackmail, the people Nathan had silenced, the dirty money that flowed behind closed doors. It was everything I needed to bring him down for good. But there was one final twist. The source dropped a bombshell. Nathan's been working with your family. He's been using them as pawns in his game. You were never supposed to find out, but he made a deal with your parents, and it's been going on for years. My mind spun. My parents? How could they be involved? It was all becoming clear now. The pieces falling into place like a jigsaw puzzle. And I was finally starting to see the whole picture. I returned to my apartment that night, the weight of the information settling heavily on my shoulders. My family? They were as much a part of this as Nathan was. I didn't know how I was going to confront them, but I knew it had to happen. Nathan had turned my whole life into a lie, and now my own blood was complicit in it. This wasn't just about Nathan anymore, it was about every single person who had been part of this twisted web. And they were all going to pay. As I stood at the window, looking out at the city lights below, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Power. For the first time in weeks, I knew exactly what I needed to do. It was time to end this. The day had come. Everything I had worked for, all the information I had gathered, all the pain and sleepless nights, it was all leading to this moment. Nathan's empire was crumbling, and I was standing at the heart of it, ready to finally put an end to it all. I had called a meeting. The people involved, my parents, my brother, Nathan's closest associates, everyone who had ever betrayed me in one way or another, they were all going to be there. It was time to face them, to hold them accountable. They thought they could silence me, they thought they could control me, manipulate me into submission, but they were wrong. I stepped into the room, my heart pounding in my chest. Nathan was sitting at the far end of the table, the smug look on his face, as though he still thought he was in control. The others were scattered around, their faces tense, uncertain. They had no idea what was about to happen. Without a word, I placed the pile of documents on the table. The proof. The evidence. Everything I had collected, everything I had fought for. Nathan's face faltered for a split second, and that's when I knew I had him. He was no longer in control. The truth was out, and there was no turning back. I looked around at everyone in the room, their faces filled with confusion, guilt, and fear. They had been playing a dangerous game, and now they were all going to lose. Do you really think I didn't know? I asked, my voice steady but full of emotion. Do you really think I wouldn't find out what you've been doing, using my family, using me, like pawns in some sick game of chess? My parents looked away, guilt etched across their faces. My brother, who I had always looked up to, couldn't even meet my gaze. And Nathan? He was scrambling now, trying to salvage what little was left of his empire. Linda, please, he pleaded, his voice shaking, but it wasn't fear I heard. It was desperation. You don't know what you're doing. You don't understand. I understand perfectly, I replied, cutting him off. I understand that everything you've built is a lie, that every relationship you've ever had has been a manipulation, and now, you're going to pay for it. The room fell silent, the weight of my words settling in. I could see the fear in their eyes, the realization that they had underestimated me. They had thought they could crush me, but now, it was their turn to feel powerless. I reached into my bag and pulled out the final piece, an anonymous letter from one of Nathan's closest allies, the one that confirmed everything. The letter was the final nail in the coffin. With it, Nathan's entire network of corruption would come crashing down. Your lies have caught up to you, I said, my voice unwavering, and this time, I'm not backing down. Nathan's face turned white as the room erupted into chaos. His associates started whispering among themselves, realizing the magnitude of what was happening. My parents, too, were beginning to understand the full extent of their involvement. I stood there, watching the unraveling of everything they had built. Nathan, who had once held all the cards, was now the one trapped in the game he had so carefully orchestrated. My family, who had betrayed me for years, was finally seeing the consequences of their actions. But the sweetest moment came when I turned to face Nathan one last time. You thought you could destroy me, I said quietly, but you've only destroyed yourself. And with that, I walked out of the room, leaving behind the shattered remnants of the life they had tried to impose on me. I was free. As I stood outside, breathing in the fresh air, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The battle was over. I had faced my demons, exposed the truth, and taken back my power. The scars of the past would never fully fade, but I had finally taken control of my own story. And as the sun began to set, I smiled for the first time in months, knowing that I had won. Not just the battle, but my life back.